It is 9:45 p.m. on a cold January night in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Inside the grand dining halls of the Costa Concordia, thousands of passengers are clinking wine glasses, laughing, and enjoying the peak of luxury. It is a 114,000-ton floating palace, a marvel of modern naval engineering, theoretically unsinkable. But beneath the surface, hidden by the dark, glassy water, a jagged rock formation, the Scole reef, is waiting. In just minutes, this palace of glass and steel will become a tilted, half-submerged tomb. And the man responsible? He is currently standing on the bridge, obsessed not with his passengers' safety, but with a vanity maneuver, a sail-by salute to the island of Giglio. He is about to steer 4,200 souls into a disaster that should have been impossible. Stick with me until the very end, because the most chilling reality of this tragedy isn't the rock that tore the hull. It's the 13-second window of confusion that sealed the fate of everyone trapped inside. You are about to discover why the ship didn't drift to shore because of the captain's skill, but because of a mechanical twist of fate that saved the lives of thousands. The Costa Concordia was not supposed to hit anything. It was equipped with the Nacos navigation system, a multi-million-dollar suite of radar, GPS, and sonar. But on the night of January 13, 2012, this technology was blinded by human ego. Captain Francesco Schettino decided to deviate from the planned route. He wanted to sail just 300 meters from the shore to perform a flashy salute. He ordered the electronic alarm systems to be turned off. He was navigating by sight, a practice that is strictly forbidden for a vessel of this size. At 9:45 p.m. the disaster began. Schettino gave an order to the helmsman, a course correction to starboard. But there was a critical failure. Because of a severe language barrier, the Indonesian helmsman didn't understand the order. He hesitated. He steered the boat in the opposite direction. It reportedly took 13 seconds to correct the maneuver. Those 13 seconds were the difference between a successful maneuver and a catastrophe. The bow swung clear, but the stern collided with the reef, tearing a 174-foot gash along the port side. This wasn't just a bump. It was a total structural failure. The gash in the hull was so massive that it allowed water to flood into the engine rooms within seconds. The weight of the seawater instantly overwhelmed the ship's electrical generators. As the engines died, the heavy computer-controlled navigation systems went black. This is where the forensic failure truly begins. The vessel was designed with a complex system of watertight compartments, intended to keep the ship afloat even if several were breached. However, the sheer scale of the 174-foot hole bypassed these safety bulkheads. The ship began to list heavily to the port side, creating a death trap for everyone inside. On the bridge, the technical radar showed the ship drifting toward the reef, yet the captain delayed the alarm for nearly 50 minutes. He wanted to avoid the embarrassment of calling for help, not realizing that he was dooming his passengers to a cold, watery grave. This is what investigators call the hour of deception. Every minute he spent lying to the Coast Guard about a simple blackout was a minute lost for the evacuation. By the time the order to abandon ship was finally given at 10:39 p.m., the ship was tilting at a 20-degree angle. The corridors had become vertical mazes. And where was the captain? He had already abandoned the vessel while hundreds of passengers, including children and the elderly, were still trapped in the dark, sinking belly of the ship. Most people believe Schettino steered the ship to the shallows to save lives. But the official casualty investigation tells a different story. The ship's rudder was actually frozen in a starboard position due to the mechanical damage from the reef. Once the engines died, the vessel was no longer under human control. It was at the mercy of the prevailing winds and currents. The wind acted as an invisible hand, pushing the ship back toward the shore of Giglio. If the rudder hadn't failed in that exact, lucky position, the Costa Concordia would have drifted into the deep, open water of the Tyrrhenian Sea before capsizing. If it had drifted into the deep, we wouldn't be talking about a partial sinking. We would be talking about thousands of lives lost in a maritime graveyard. Schettino didn't save the ship. He was a passenger in his own disaster. The aftermath of the tragedy triggered one of the most intense legal battles in maritime history. In 2015, Francesco Schettino was sentenced to 16 years in prison for multiple counts of manslaughter and the abandonment of his ship. But the fallout went far beyond one man. The insurance company involved paid out over $400 million, but that number was dwarfed by the massive multi-year salvage operation. The Parbuckling project, a landmark feat of civil engineering, required a year of preparation just to rotate the massive hulk back onto its keel before it could be towed away. It cost over $1.5 billion, making the Costa Concordia the most expensive maritime salvage job in history. The legal legacy also forced cruise lines across the globe to overhaul their emergency training. It became clear that in the digital age, a captain is not just a master of navigation, they are a master of communication. The language barriers on the bridge that day became a mandatory case study for every maritime academy on Earth. We learned that a ship's safety is only as good as the least experienced crew member's ability to understand an order. Beyond the legal and engineering failures, there was a deep psychological collapse on the bridge. Analyzing the transcripts of the crew's behavior reveals a terrifying hierarchy of silence. Junior officers recognized the danger immediately, but were paralyzed by a rigid, antiquated maritime culture that demanded unquestioning obedience to the captain. They saw the radar alerts. They heard the grinding of steel. But because Schettino was the authority, they hesitated to speak up until it was too late. This culture of silence is common in high-stakes industries, from aviation to industrial manufacturing. It is a fatal flaw, where the fear of challenging a superior overrides the instinct for self-preservation. When the Costa Concordia struck the reef, the bridge wasn't a team. It was a fragmented group of individuals locked in a panic. The lack of a clear, practiced emergency protocol meant that when the sensors failed, the human beings in charge had no backup plan to rely on. We must also look at the technical forensics of the ship's buoyancy. The Concordia was built with 17 watertight compartments. According to the design specifications, the ship should have remained afloat with any two of these flooded. However, because of the sheer magnitude of the impact, 6 were flooded simultaneously. The ship's center of gravity shifted violently. Within 15 minutes, the vessel was listing at an angle that made launching lifeboats on the port side impossible. The passengers, who had been enjoying a gala dinner, were suddenly tasked with navigating a dark, tilting labyrinth of steel. The emergency lighting system, which was supposed to be independent, failed shortly after the collision because the electrical cables were routed through the same engine rooms that had flooded first. This was a catastrophic engineering oversight. By grouping all primary electrical conduits in a single zone, the ship's designers had created a single point of failure that doomed the entire vessel. Now, as we reach the 2026 milestone, the new Netflix documentary, Nightmare at Sea, is bringing these forgotten files back to the surface. People are searching for the truth. They want to know why the evacuation failed so catastrophically. They want to know if the cruise industry has actually changed. The reality is that while technology has advanced, the fundamental risk remains the same. We have engineered ships that are supposedly unsinkable, but we have yet to engineer a fix for human pride. The tragedy was not just a failure of steel, it was a failure of the human spirit. It serves as a haunting reminder that in the absolute extremes of the world, safety is not a guarantee provided by technology. It is a responsibility that rests entirely on the competence and integrity of those in command. Whether it's private aviation or the massive cruise liners of 2026, the law of the sea remains the same. When the person on the bridge puts their ego before their passengers, the unsinkable ship is already lost. As we look at the high-stakes industries of 2026, the lesson remains the same. When the leader on the bridge puts their own ego before the lives of their passengers, the unsinkable ship is already at the bottom of the sea. The next time you board a massive vessel or embark on an extreme adventure, remember the 13-second mistake. Remember the hour of deception. And remember that in the absolute extremes of the world, safety is not a guarantee provided by technology. It is a responsibility that rests entirely on the competence and integrity of those in command. When those systems fail, the cold, dark water doesn't care about your net worth or your status. It only cares about the decisions you make in the seconds before the impact. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and always question the systems we trust with our lives. Because as we learned on the night of January 13th, the truth is often hiding just beneath the surface. Stay alert for the next big reveal, because history never stays buried for long.